Hey everyone, I'm Lyon. I'm a co-founder of Blameless, and we have been deploying our SRE platform to companies globally. And today is the first time I get to share some of that data about how some of these deployments are going, and specifically what has been the blockers to adoption and how you can overcome some of those. So some of the data we've been collecting and will share today come from startups like small pre-IPO company startups to Fortune 500s. So the startups include Procore or Masterclass, online education startup, or public companies like Home Depot, Siemens. So we've taken a lot of that and hope to share from those case studies and lessons with you. And my co-speaker today is Christina.
Hi everyone, my name is Christina. I am the founder of EloquentSpeaking. I actually also work with Blameless. So I've coached thousands of engineers, startup founders on how to pitch or how to amplify the most important message that they care about. I've helped founders raise more than $30 million so far, and that really is about persuasion. So having worked at Blameless, having interviewed heads of SREs at LinkedIn, Uber, Twilio, Evernote, I'm really excited here to share what I've learned from these thought leaders and how you can leverage persuasion within your company to really champion SRE.
So today's session I would classify as more advanced, meaning that a lot of the basic definitions I'm going to assume you have covered elsewhere, and a lot of the intermediate things, which is the motivation on why SRE, I also assume will be covered elsewhere. So the what it is and the why covered elsewhere. This session is focused on how. So if you want to deploy across your organization, how to do that. So that will be the focus of today. Obviously, if there are things that are not clear, we'll take questions, but that will be the emphasis to try and get through and build on top of some of the material that's already been shared at the conference so far.
Before you switch, the next slide is going to be our agenda. So this is how we would map the different levels of commitment to SRE to the different levels of leadership. Assuming that you or the audience as a whole is committed to SRE, since you're at SREcon, how does the ideas of SRE go across going up the ladder? So how can you convince the manager or lead on how to do investing in incident management? How are you going to convince your VP or director on investing into automated metrics and continuous learning? And how will you convince your CEO or CTO on adopting SLOs and error budgets? These are the three sections that we're going to go through throughout today's talk. And for each stage, what we're going to go through is the definition, how we characterize incident management or automated metrics, SLOs, a case study on how it was successfully deployed, the incentive for why the specific levels of leadership would want to adopt this specific stage of SRE, and what resistance the leadership might have, and how can we counter that, and what action items can we do to counter it.
So a lot of this talk is going to cover the F word, which I know a lot of you guys don't like, which is the feelings. And the art of persuasion. So I took a class at Stanford with the CEO of Oracle, one of the co-CEOs, and the one lesson that she taught to some of the class and that I saw applied best by some of the best poker players in the class, 3 of them which are world championship players that have won over $5 million each, is that if you want to persuade, you don't take your perspective, you try to live in the perspective of the person or the group that you're trying to persuade. And that's what we're going to attempt to do today, which is how do you project from where you are to who you're trying to convince, and in this case, the different levels that we've talked about. So it's moving from you into them, and sometimes that means giving up the idea. So yes, you have the idea and you have the motivation to implement SRE, but sometimes if you're successful, they will see it as their idea, and they'll be like, well, I have this great idea, and that's okay. That's part of the inception process, and your goal is to succeed as a whole. And it's okay if they get the credit for the idea sometimes, because that means you've done your job very successfully.
And that little thing that rotates, you'll see throughout today's talk whenever there are things to incept. So this is a framework for persuasion that I would like to introduce. And this is nothing new. So this is based on the persuasive appeals that Aristotle came up with thousands of years ago. It's ethos, pathos, logos. Emotional appeal, logic, and credibility. But in this case, we want to focus on data because oftentimes the resistance that you'll see to adopting SRE is default momentum. Managers are too busy with their existing work, and they need to convince and bring a lot of people on board in order to take SRE to the next step. So it's important to have data so that you can come in and have proof in a distributable format that the managers can then use for more people in the organization.
So let's apply this to an example. The situation here we'll imagine is that you are, so this is what happened over Memorial Day weekend in the US just less than a couple of weeks ago, which is during the middle of the Sunday, I got woken up because there was an incident. And so I got called and paged. Thankfully, in my case, there was an incident management system where I knew what to do and knew what the protocol was, but if there wasn't, that would have interrupted my whole flow of that weekend because I would have to scramble to figure out who's on board. So the situation you're going to imagine here is that you have come to the realization you want to implement an incident management system, and how are you going to convince your team lead, your team manager, whoever it is that may make that decision, how will you persuade them to do so? And that's the challenge and situation.
As promised, per section, we're going to define what we mean when we say incident management and the subsequent steps. So here, when we say incident management, we're talking about incident response playbooks, measuring time to detection, assemble, investigate, and resolution, and integrations with monitoring systems and ticketing workflow. So take a minute to absorb that in, because we'll umbrella that under incident management and move forward.
Let's start with a couple of case study examples. So one is there is a Fortune 500 retailer that has been trying to work with us to get an incident response system set up. But every time we have the meeting to the onboarding, so far it's happened twice, we set up the meeting, we're prepared, they have an incident. So they cancel the meeting, and they've, for now, almost over a month now, have not been able to even have the onboarding session because every time they do, they run into an incident. So that is the unfortunate situation of that, is if you try to implement it while you're in the middle of fighting fires, you will have to prioritize, and you may not be able to actually implement a system. On the other hand, this is a positive case study with Masterclass. They implemented a new incident response system before they hired 50 new engineers. And as the result, with those new 50 engineers they brought on, there were 10 times more incidents the following month after the onboarding, but they were able to recover from that because they had a system in place advanced. So those are a couple of case studies.
And next, we're going to do an activity. So every time you see the little Mario on this slide, it means that we have an interactive component of this talk. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to divide the room up conveniently into 4 sections. Oh, look, it's already in 4 sections. So what we'll do is we'll ask you to look at these reasons for why a company should adopt incident management, and think about how you would phrase this from an SRE manager's perspective. And this section here is going to cover the first point. So if you were to share this thought, idea with your manager, how would you say it? Second one will be covered by this section. Third, playbooks will keep me organized and thorough. That will be by this section. And then the fourth one will be by the other section.
Should we read it out so you know what it is? So the first section is, I don't want to get paged at 2 a.m. The second group is, automation will reduce context switching for me. And the third one is, playbooks will keep me organized and thorough. And section 4 is, I want to measure TTR.
Yeah.
Time to, okay. So,
time to resolution.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That's what
Okay.
I said, right?
So now you're going to have a partner throughout the rest of the workshop. So choose wisely. find someone close to you and make sure that you have someone who can go through these activities with. And you and your partner will spend 2 minutes talking about how you would share this, and we're going to ask for volunteers from each section to help fill out this table together. Okay, now raise your hand if you have a partner already. Everyone's hand should find partners. Raise your hand, keep your hand raised if you have a partner. We're doing some degree of coercion. You two can be partners. Okay, great. Now, your 2-minute mark has begun. Take your time. How would you share this in an SRE manager's perspective?
No. Too big. You can walk around.
Ten seconds. Three, two, one. Well, thank you so much for participating. We're going to start from this section. Can someone raise their hand and share what you came up with? Oh. Sorry?
Or you can use the mic if you want.
Oh, yeah.
All right, got a
Please.
hand there.
Should we pass it around?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Here we go. Hello.
Hey.
It's better. So from a manager's perspective, I don't want to pay for unplanned overtime, and I want to reduce the number of people that I have to have on call, also reducing the amount of pay that I have to have for on-call personnel.
That's great.
Yes, excellent.
Perspective has been shifted. Okay, thank you. From this section, how will you share this message differently?
Who has something? Can you say your name and then your answer?
I'm Alvian. So ours is automation will reduce context switching for me. So for manager's perspective, I would want to reduce toil.
So you'll say,
Hence, I would like to have automation.
I would like to reduce toil, hence I would like to, okay. Hold that thought. It's great, thank you.
Section 3. Great. Oh, great. You can grab it yourself.
Hi, my name is Roshania. So how I would rephrase that, I would say outages will be fixed much quicker, so service would have less downtime.
Excellent. And section 4, you get a volunteer from there. I want to measure TTR. Yes.
So as a manager, I have SLAs that have been pushed on me, and without a measure of TTR, there's no way I can argue them.
It's good. That works. So, yours.
Oh, well, we also thought we would try to go through this exercise. There's by no means a right answer. I think you really were able to capture the idea of appealing to the manager's interests.
There is a right answer. The answer is the one that's going to work for your manager. But that is a different answer for everyone. And that goes to the lesson is know who exactly your audience is and know their personality, et cetera. So that's a very tailored one, but in generic, there's no one single answer that will work for everyone.
Great. And since Leon came up with most of the answers, I'm going to read the first one, and then you can read the corresponding one. Okay. I don't want to get paged at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I like the answer better that was given
read?
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to read this?
No? Go ahead. Oh, so you don't want your boss to call you at 5 a.m. That's just shifting perspective a little bit, but I like the answer that was given because that shifted the perspective a lot to more results.
Automation will reduce context switching for me.
Yeah, I think toil it makes a lot of sense, that answer. I think this one tied to the answer given over here for section 4, which is it helps incident gets resolved faster, and that speaking to the outcomes at the manager level is very effective.
Playbook will keep me organized and thorough.
Yeah. Here is like you want to emphasize you'll get a more dependable process as for managing the whole team. That's one approach you can take.
I want to
Lastly,
measure time to resolution.
Is, yeah, you get to show, and I think it speaks to a point that was raised here, you need to demonstrate and prove what you've done, and through this as a mechanism, you're going to be able to do that. So these are examples. Through our deployments and conversations, we found that you need to map out this table yourself, which is what do you think the value of this is, and how do you interpret to language is that the managers can tell to the rest of the team the benefits to the organization at that level. Now let's get to our first roadblock that you may run into during these conversations. So one of the issues you run into is the Asagi Syndrome. Not the Saki Nagiri, but Asagi stands for our systems are good enough. Meaning there's a lot of momentum because that we've heard when trying to get a system deployed at your initial team level is there's already something in place. And that system that's in place has been running for a long time and it's good enough. So why do you have the momentum to go and change that? And that's where this framework will help you.
Now let's borrow Aristotle's wisdom to try and overcome this resistance. So once again, we're going to go into an activity and divide the room into 3 groups. We're going to have these 2 sections be group 1, where you're going to come up with a logical argument on how to overcome the resistance that, oh, our systems are good enough. How are you going to use logic, so if-then statements for this? And this will be group 2. How will you use emotions to appeal to the manager? And over there, group 3, how will you use data? What kind of data can you collect to prove your point that our systems may not be as good enough as we thought it is? Okay, go back to your partner, and you have 2 minutes to discuss.
That's the problem, right? Saying there's nothing good enough, right? By their measure that you think that their measure is wrong necessarily, unless you're telling them like it's not good. You can't make an argument to make it better.
Ten seconds.
I'm saying how much time is left. 10 seconds.
lost track of time. Time's up.
Time's up. All right. Okay, so we're going to try out this process. What are some logical arguments you can make to counteract the idea that the existing system is good enough? Can you get an example?
So my name is Sean. I'm coming at this with the assumption that this company has brought in like reliability consultants. And so based on that, like the logical argument that we would have is if you've bothered to bring in reliability consultants, then something is not quite right, or something is not as good as you think it is. So therefore, like your systems may not be good enough.
Okay, that you did that, you brought in the consultants because you recognized there was a problem or something could be better. Okay, that is logically sound. Okay, one more logic example? Yes?
Hi, so the way we reason this is basically an engineering having a conversation with their lead, and the logic is if our system is good enough, then everything that's being caused by the system is intended. So if people are waking up at 2 a.m., we want that to happen. If customers are suffering, we want that to happen. If we don't want that to happen, that means the system is not good enough. So it's kind of like if-then.
Okay, great. Great examples. Okay, let's get the emotional argument. I know that's a hard one here with the F word. So emotional examples, please.
You're only as good as the information you have available to you. Our current systems don't give you the transparency and that ability to control what's going on.
Loss of control is great. One more example for emotion. Anyone else can share? Okay, I know it's hard. Data. Hit them with the data. Who can help with the data argument? What proof, what metrics can you show for this? Okay, here, there, yes.
Basically, I will provide two kinds of data to my manager. The first kind of data is KPI related to SRO. For example, downtime, success rate, etc. The second kind of data is maybe I will get the number of customer complaints from our customer service team.
Great. Did you have anything to add to that?
No, I was going to add that if you are in the extremely bad situation where you don't have data, it means that you have to put it out from whatever source there is, so your emails or stuff like that. And the mere fact that it takes me 3 weeks to get 3 data points is proof enough that we don't have data.
Too painful.
Good
Okay,
point.
great. So the time it takes to collect the data. So here are some examples that we've heard that are effective in convincing. So logical arguments is that you can have, the system is just getting more complex. So going to the blameless principle, you're not blaming the manager that you did this for intentionally, but out of your control, the system is more complex now. So logically, we need more, whatever we've done before is still not good enough because the bar has gone up. Second is you will lose your team to burnout. So that goes to the point of if they're waking up at 2 a.m. And then at their current rate that you've been going, so drawing trends based on historical performance and historical direction is another good way to continue the logical argument. On the emotional one, I think it was hit on here, is fear. I have jokingly FOMO, but you can acknowledge the system in place and then show that others. I think a really good mechanism on emotional appeal is showing what the others in your industry are doing and what potentially your competitors are doing or other teams are doing. Those reference points are very good to motivate. And at Stanford, they had a phrase, the peer pressure of that helps to get that going. Data, I think those were right in line with what we've captured, which is capture the second point is mentioned, capture the customer issues and those. But specific data you can use at this stage is to show the number of dependencies and show the complexity of the system increasing. You factually prove that. And then you can also show through minimum example what one team could look like if you deployed a system like this and what the reduction in time to discovery, time to assemble, time to resolution is, and you can show it with one set of small incidents before rolling out to the whole system. So that becomes data and evidence of proof for you to push this to a larger audience. So now, fast forward, assuming you succeed at this phase, and slowly you get success that incident management gets deployed in a larger group, we come to our first roadblock, which is at the end of that success, a common trap that we see is that you stop there. And incident management is not all there is to SRE. And so this is one of the major blockers we see, is that it took so much effort to get the incident management in place already. I'm done with SRE there. And that is only a local optimum. And so that continuing beyond that to the next phase of adoption is something that takes explicit effort.
So now you have incident management. How can you prove that one, it's working well, and that more is needed? So in this section, the second section, we're going to talk about how to convince a VP or director to invest in automated metrics and continuous learning.
Defining what that is, specifically here we mean automated reporting. So this speaks to the point that if it's taking you hours to collect the data and to show it and present it to the team, that's toil. How can you eliminate that completely? How do you provide different views of the data on their incidents and impact for the team specifically so it's relevant to you? And also, how do you conduct blameless postmortems and learn from incidents as they occur or after they occur? These are all components of what we mean by this phase of post-resolution treatment of the data.
As a case study, Procore is a construction SaaS company. They implemented incident management. It was working really well for them. They were resolving incident after incident after incident. But they were starting to see common patterns among these incidents, and that many of these were actually sharing the same root cause. But these patterns didn't emerge until they did deep analysis through postmortems. And that's when they could have data-backed patterns on some of the issues that are present in the company. And they actually were able to uncover issues like we need new headcount, we might need to refactor certain parts of the system, and have data to back it up and say, okay, here are all the postmortems that share this common root cause, and be able to make the case a lot more compelling. And without the data, it would have been much harder for them to make that case. So that's why it's important to I mean, data collection can be very time-consuming. Experienced engineers may have an instinct about what's going wrong and what needs to be fixed, but this will make the process much easier. And that's also why we need to automate the process, because manual data collection can be extremely painful.
Yeah. So we always start with a case study to show that no matter how daunting it may seem to convince the org to transition to a new way of doing postmortems, that it's possible, and we've seen it go from unstructured postmortems to very structured postmortems in a short period of time. I think in Procore's case, it was less than 2 months. So we share these to prove that it is possible. Now, the first step to doing this is what we did in the first section, which is applying your hat to the other perspective again. It's what is the incentive for adoption of such an automated data collection system and a more rigorous, structured, metadata-driven postmortem system is you have these set of things. Remove silos, promotes collaboration across teams. It helps present the data to relevant stakeholders, your executives, and it prevents issues from recurring because you're able to do deep postmortem analysis, and there's some talks on that tomorrow. Lastly, having this captured allows you to train new engineers and get them up to speed, even though they weren't there to experience these incidents in the first place, and that's how you distribute knowledge across an org. So these are arguments that we've seen be effective for motivations to implement such a system.
It's activity time again. So these are some of the possible resistance to adoption. And some of the most common ones that we've seen is 1, incident management is enough. 2 is reliability is not a priority issue. And then 3 is, postmortems are taking too much time to write or are very tedious to review. So we're once again going to divide the room into 3 and have you talk with a partner to think about how you're going to counter these resistance. So this left section over here will be answering how you can counter incident management is enough. And this section will be on the second topic. And then this time, these 2 sections will combine to talk about how to counter the third objection. You have 2 minutes.
Good on time? Yeah.
Ten seconds. Time's up.
All right, would love to hear answers to this actually. So what points? You can choose from any of the structure, LED, of for countering incident management is enough. Who can share on that? Did it stump everyone? No one? Oh, you, okay, great.
The number of incidents are too high, and if you look at the trend, it's growing. That's one.
Okay.
And the number of significant outages as well are not going down per se.
Okay, so things are getting worse. Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
For a second one, reliability is not a priority. Any good responses to that? What did you guys have?
Yeah.
Please.
Let me grab the mic for you.
Thank you. Hello. So we can say reliability is not a priority issue, right? So because the application or the software is not reliable, that's why we have n number of incidents. So once the software becomes more reliable, the number of incident generation would be less.
Okay, so it's tying it to the incident total count. Okay.
Thank you.
How about for postmortems? Take too much time to write and are tedious to review.
Postmortems are necessary because you need to learn from your mistakes and reduce repeat mistakes, prevent the same mistake from being made again.
Okay.
And ultimately, it will lead to reduce the incidents, happy customers, and better improved bottom line.
Okay, great, thank you. I think those were all had an outcome of reducing incidents and then different triggers for that. Let me show you some responses we've heard and data collected to offset. So incident management is not enough. Without postmortems, you're not improving. So the default path is that it gets worse over time. Both those points were raised here. Data you can use to prove that is you can look at the past set of incidents you've had and number of them and do the postmortems on those and see what the correlation is and see if those could have been prevented and see if those actually would have patterns associated with those. Second, you can create work items related to detection, mitigation, and prevention, and bucket these work items based on your previous incidents and see how much of these work items would actually help mitigate and prevent. So prove out the theory, the hypothesis that was made. On reliability is not a priority. Well, it's always easy to ship new features, but reliability is the net sum of all features you've already shipped before. So the sum of all that is greater than any single one new feature you're about to ship. And so I think that fundamentally is an emotional argument for that then can also be backed by data. Finally, we have postmortems takes too much time. You can address that by looking for something that will make postmortems take less time. How could you automate the creation of postmortems so that it's less time consuming? And then if they take too much time to review, that's because generally postmortems are written in a free-form structure of text. It's very hard to go back and analyze. Well, how can you create a schema or template structure in the postmortem so that that data is better encapsulated and better retrieved later? So those are action items you can take to build up the case to address the two fundamental concerns for postmortems. These are just examples. I think overall, you want to take this and flesh out what are the whole set of metrics you could do on the team, the emotion, and the logical arguments, and stitch those together. We'll show one more example of this with situation 3. So assuming now, fast forwarding again, like the oven has baked another level, you now have postmortems properly implemented, they're automated, they're well structured, you're generating reports, and data is being generated automatically based on your incidents as a whole. That is a huge accomplishment. If you get here, you're really ahead of many teams, and you're going to be feeling already a lot of momentum and benefits. What is the last stage then? It's really moving from this reactive mode of incident-driven to still being proactive and really taking the overall goal of reliability, assigning a metric to it and upholding it, and agreeing with the business units what you will do in case of those error budgets being consumed. So that's the level you're going to promote this at, and it's at the CEO, CTO, or CIO level. What exactly do we mean at this phase? We mean that you have your user journeys mapped. We mean that you have your SLOs and SLIs tightly defined and hooked up into the right parts of the system. And we mean that you will have your business teams agreeing on the SLO error budget thresholds and what will happen in case of the thresholds being breached. All of this is encapsulated in this phase.
Let's do an Inception activity now. So if you think about it, there could be many reasons why a CTO or CEO would want to adopt SLOs and error budgets, assuming that you really strongly believe in its value. I'm going to ask you once again to talk to your partner, except this time, we're not going to divide you guys into separate groups. Just talk to your partner and brainstorm for ideas on why a CEO or CTO would be incentivized to adopt SLOs or error budgets. And try to speak in their language and think about it from their perspective. You have 2 minutes again. But before you start, raise your hand if you have a partner. We're going to implement an accountability measure. Please, everyone, find a partner. Great. Your 2 minutes shall begin.
Back on track. Right? was a quiz. Yeah, we can take turns on the questions. We're going to take turns. No, on the quiz. Yeah, thank you.
Ten seconds. Time's up.
All right. So, what are some incentives? Please.
So our argument is you're missing one of the C something O's, which would be the CFO, but we'll let the CEO stand in for that. And basically, it's simple that we have SLAs with our customers. We don't meet our SLAs. There's financial problems. You're the CEO. You're responsible for the money as far as the board is concerned. We don't meet our SLAs. We're going to pay a penalty. So therefore, let's set our SLOs to be less than our SLAs. Try to achieve our SLOs, come in nice and way under our SLAs, and never have to worry about paying the customers.
Very logical. Thank you. And you're right. Okay. Others? Volunteers? Okay. This here. What did you come up with? Stumped? Okay. All right. No problem. How about here? Anyone?
Yep, someone at the back.
Oh.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So you'll be able to actually see by a graph how you're doing with your error budget, your SLOs, your reliability. And you can say, comparing to other companies in the same field, whether they have it or not, if you're doing better than them, you can use that as a selling point and therefore get more customers to go for your product.
Great. Benchmarking.
And charge more.
Excellent.
You mastered the FOMO emotional appeal.
Okay, here. Can someone? Yes. It's coming.
So you can make the argument for customer retention and customer satisfaction, and that by setting an error budget, you're setting the expectations of what the customer will accept up front and making sure that you're meeting them.
Yeah, and they should care about customers.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Anyone from the side want to contribute? Thank you.
You can make the argument that having good SLOs allows you to make sure that you don't overperform, which is a waste of money, and so a waste of resource.
Spend the budget that you have.
Yeah.
Great. So a lot was captured. I think long-term competitive advantage I would relate to competitive benchmarking, tying it to the customer need, that reliability is feature number one. That's another way of putting that. Having the ability to spend your budget and drain your overall technical debt to avoid unplanned feature freezes, reducing the cost and spend, being able to measure the impact to customers. All these are good examples, but I liked in each one of these, I've already seen progress. You've put yourself into that position and embodied that mindset. And then I love this next case study. It's you.
Okay, so Evernote started implementing their SLOs with just one. They were measuring the availability of their services. And they set an SLO, and they were tracking the performance against the SLO. So let's assume that the SLO they set was 99%. And they were consistently meeting it, but then after a while, they were consistently just below it. And at the time, a new VP of engineering was hired. He came in, and the director of SRE said, we need to refactor. VP of engineering says, where's the data? And director of SRE comes in, presents their performance against the SLO, showing that it's consistently missing it. And the VP of engineering got it right away. He said, what can we do about it? So that gave him the data to prove that, oh, this is now time to refactor and invest in some of our architecture so that we can be more reliable overall, so that we can meet our customers' expectation of our reliability.
And the magic of that case study is that happened in a single conversation. So imagine getting the alignment and resources commitment in a single conversation. That is very efficient. So resistance to this, if you come into it, is, okay, I'm C-level, whatnot. I don't see the connection to the business. Why should SRE be a top priority? So here are some example counters to that. One is that your customer impact is expensive. We had the CFO argument here. Yes, violating your SLAs are high cost. But the unmeasured cost is the brand and reputational impact. You're losing your customers' trust. How do you measure that? I think earlier in the session, someone on this side mentioned NPS scores is a way we could do that. So these two are tangible things you can bring in. Next is you can put the SLA, obviously it must be set before your SLO must trigger before your SLA, and you hit 0.3, you catch it before your SLAs are triggered. And the data you can collect from the cost of downtime, brand value, all these are related to the overall theme of customer impact. Next is we have competitive advantage, showing that you look worse than your competitors, that how can you recover faster from incidents, benchmarking that. So these are all great examples. I'm really happy that many of those were hit in this room today. Now, a common trap, though, is there's an expectation that I can just easily get 100 SLOs set up, or even 1,000. How many SLOs on average do you have deployed? I think in the Evernote case, we heard they started with 1, and they had 1 for a very long time. I think the average we've seen at Blameless is 10, starting with 10 SLOs. Amazingly, these 10, some of these 10 have taken 6 months to 9 months to do 10 SLOs properly. And for one company, it's taken them 9 months to implement, to get 1 SLO going because they didn't have the SLI metrics set up to measure that. So coming in with too much of an expectation or signaling that you're going to have everything measured, which you eventually do want, is unrealistic and often is a trap for why people get stuck during this part of the phase.
Thank you for staying with us for this far. This is a summary of the key highlights that we've shared so far. For each stage, here are some of the key ideas that you can share. And as you can see, there is a little Mario, which means we have an activity coming up right after this.
So this slide will be available on distribution, but right now, everyone should have their phone. So we're going to go to Kahoot. Right now, live.
So pull up your phone, go to your browser, and this is the address to type in, kahoot.it.
So we have a few minutes to go through this Kahoot. We have some prizes to give out. There's going to be some winners. And
these
more
are the
winners.
prizes, chocolates.
So let's
top
join.
Top three,
Can you set
each
it up?
person will get one. Yeah.
Do they have the code?
It'll appear.
All right, so everyone's at Kahoot. You don't have to download the app. You just punch in this, 888146.
And come up with a funny name.
So Kahoot is...
For everyone's benefit.
Oh, not everyone knows Kahoot, right? Kahoot is doesn't put anything on your phone. You browse to this webpage. It's a quiz we're going to do. Once all the data is destroyed, your name, etc., so it's safe. And
so root
I think
P0,
we should have...
P0 is very clever.
All right, anyone not on yet? Everyone is still going up. 90, 91, 92,
Whoa.
5, 6, 9, 99, 100. Oh, we got 105, 6. Do we have 108? We do. Do we have 109? 10, 11. Are we done? Okay,
It's an auction.
let's begin. I think, That's it.
Okay.
Okay,
Start.
let's start.
I can't
I'll do the first one.
Oh.
Okay,
alright.
we're starting.
Oh.
Hurry, go, start. All right, 7 questions. Are you ready? First one. What is the official mascot of Singapore? Is it mer dog, mer goat, mer panda, or mer lion?
You will be rewarded for the speed of response, so don't hesitate.
Precision. And this is a warm-up question. It was not related to our talk, but just to get the things going. Whoa, okay, we got 1 mer dog, 4 mer goats, 5 mer pandas, and then 104 correct answers. Okay, now for the real question. And we have our fastest correct answer time, bot. This is not a real bot, but okay, next.
What is the most effective perspective to convince a SRE manager to adopt incident management? Is it, I don't want to get paged at 2 a.m., automation will reduce context switching for me, incidents will get resolved faster, or playbooks will keep me organized and thorough? Speed is the essence, people.
Okay, 115, almost. 5.
All right. Many people
The
don't want
majority
to
got
get
it right.
paged at 2 a.m.
Good
It's
job.
too painful to get paged at 2 a.m. Understandably so.
Remember, here was your perspective versus the other's perspective. Okay, next.
Okay.
What is the least strong response to incident management is enough, we don't need postmortems? Least strong. Least. The weakest of the 4. We'll read it out. First one, we're already doing postmortem, so just not normalized. Answer 2, you can uncover contributing factors of recent incidents. Answer 3, deep postmortems can lead to incident prevention. And 4, reliability is all existing features combined.
It's too small. We're running a bit short on time, so we're going to cap it at this. Oh, I can't stop it. Can I skip it?
No, just let it run.
No.
Oh, okay. What happens if you press skip? To skip. Oh, skip the next one. Oh, this was those were strong answers. So they were all valid answers. This was a really difficult question. That was the least strong because it's more vague, because it's all features combined. So the other was more specific. Okay, what does Asagi stand for? Asagi, who's hungry?
You get.
Our systems are good enough.
Unfortunately, we need to skip. Sorry, we are running short on time, so.
How
we'll
many
have
people
time
should you
to-
talk to for SRE adoption?
1 second.
I see random answers being pressed now. Just like, forget it. Okay. Oh, random answers being pressed without reading the answer.
Sorry.
Oh, we need to postmortem this quiz. It didn't work out that well.
we will have
Wait,
some
what's the best kind of
postmortems to do.
postmortems? Lameless, shameless, blameless, or nameless? Skip.
Okay. Yeah. Hey.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, P0 stood out. Okay, please come on over to the stage. We have gifts for you. Thank you so much for participating, and thank you for. 1 second. Thank you for coming across this. Yeah, thank you for participating in the talk. If you could take 2 minutes to go on this website and share your feedback on the talk with us, that'd be ultra helpful. Thank you very much.